Hello everyone, my name is Jolly Rose Lapinig from Bitalat ICT 1D, and I'm here to talk to you about the Republic Act 10121. But before we talk about the Republic Act 10121, let's understand first the meaning of disaster. Disaster, a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or society at any scale due to hazardous events interacting with conditioning of exposure, vulnerability, and capacity, leading to one or more environmental losses and impacts. Annotation: the effect of disaster can be immediate and localized but is often widespread and could be last for a long time period of time. The effect may test or exceed capacity of a community or society to cope using its own resources and therefore may require assistance from external resources which could include labor borrowing, jurisdiction, or those at the national or international levels. Republic Act number 10121. So this title should be known as the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. If we talk about disaster risk reduction or DDR, it aims to reduce the damage caused by natural hazards like earthquakes, floods, droughts, and cyclones through an ethic of prevention. So we all know that the Philippines are located in the Ring of Fire, is a region around much of the rim of the Pacific Ocean where many volcanic eruptions and earthquakes occur. The first hazard that we face is volcanic eruption. So how we say that? Because it is the evidence by the experienced earthquake in Philippines. The Philippines is in the typhoon belt, where are located at the home of the typhoons and hurricanes. Section 2 under Republic Act number 10121. It states that the state shall develop, promote, and implement a comprehensive national disaster risk reduction and management plan, or NDRRMP, that aims to strengthen the capacity of a national government and local government units, or LGUS, together with the partner stakeholders to build the disaster resilience of communities and institutionalize arrangements and measures for reducing disaster risk and enhancing disaster preparedness and response capabilities. Section 2 under Republic Act number 10121. State of calamity, a conditioning involving mass casualty or major damage to property, disruption of men, livelihoods, roads, and normal way of life of people in the affected areas as a result of the occurrence of natural or human-induced hazard.
Good day, everyone. I am Nur Iman S. Abdul Ghani from 1D Bitalet IA. For today's video, I will explain the Section 4 scope, the Section 5, the National Disaster Risk Management Reduction, and Section 6, the National Council member under the Republic Act 10121. Section 4 scope. This act provides for the development of policies and plans and the implementation of action and measures pertaining to all aspects of disaster risk, including good governance, risk assessment, and early warning knowledge, building and awareness, reducing underlying risk factors, and preparedness for effective response and early recovery. So it means the National Disaster Risk Management Plan is being formulated, developed, and implemented as the master plan that will provide the strategies or organization tasks of concerned agency and local government units and others guidelines in dealing with disasters or emergencies through this plan a coherent, integrated, efficient, and responsive disaster. So, disaster risk management at all levels will hopefully be achieved. The law also promotes the development of capacities in disaster management at the individual, organizational, and institutional levels, a very important feature of law. It is called for the mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction in physical and land use planning budget, infrastructure, education, health, environment, housing, and other sectors. So we proceed to the next Section 5. Section 5, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. The present National Disaster Coordinating Council or NDCC shall henceforth be known as the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, the NDRRMC or the National Council. So it means the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, formerly known as the National Disaster Coordinating Council, is a working group of various government and non-government, civil sector, and private sector organization of the government of the Republic Act of the Philippines established by the Republic of the Philippines, established by the Republic Act 10121 by the Office of Civil Defense OCD under the Department of National Defense DND. The Council is the responsible for ensuring the protection and welfare of the people during disaster or emergencies. The NDRRMC plans and leads the guiding activities in the field of communication, warning, signals, emergency, transportation, evacuation, rescue, engineering, health, and rehabilitation for public education and auxiliary services such as fire, fighting, and the police in the country. The Council utilized the UN cluster approach in the disaster management. It is the country focal for the Asian Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response, the AADMER, and many other related international commitments. So now, we proceed to the next Section 6. Section 6, the National Council member shall be the following. First, the Secretary of the Department of Health, which is DO. The Secretary of the Department of Health, Francisco Duque III. The current Secretary of Health, Francisco Duque III, was appointed by the President Rodrigo Duterte on October 26, 2011. The Department of Health, ito, Pilipino Kagawaran ng Kalusugan, is the executive department of the Philippines government responsible for ensuring access to basic public health services by all Filipinos through the provision of quality health care, the regulation of all health services and products. It is the government's overall technical authority on health. It has its headquarters at the San Lazaro compound along Rizal Avenue in the Manila. The head of department is led by the Secretary of Health. Currently, Francisco Duque III, nominated by the President of the Philippines and confirmed by the Commission and appointments to the Health Secretary is a member of the Cabinet. And next, Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources is responsible for the formulation and implementation of policies, guidelines, and rules related to environmental management, as well as the management and conservation of the country's natural resources. Also, a native of Bangau, Ilocos Norte, Secretary Roy A. Climatu is graduate of the public school system from the elementary up to high school. Despite this, he graduated from the Philippines Military Academic in the class of 1970. His eagerness to learn made him attain more scholastic achievements. And next, Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture, abbreviated as the DA, Pilipino Kagawaran ng Agrikultura, is the executive department of the Philippines government responsible for the promotion of agricultural and fisheries development and growth. It has its headquarters as the elliptical road corner Visayas Avenue de Lima, Quezon City. The department is currently led by the Secretary of Agriculture, nominated by the President of the Philippines and confirmed by the Commission on Appointment. The Secretary is a member of the Cabinet. The current Secretary is William Doctor, who assumed office on August 5, 2019. And next, Secretary of the Department of Education. It has its headquarters at the DepEd Complex in Meralco Avenue, Pasig. The department is currently led by the Secretary of Education, nominated by the President of the Philippines and confirmed with the Commission on Appointment. The currently Secretary of Education is Leonor Ramos. Department of Education. The Department of Education, abbreviated as DepEd, Filipino Kagawaran ng Edukasyon, is the executive department of the Philippines government responsible for ensuring access to promoting equity in and improving the quality of basic education. It has the main agency tasked to manage and govern the Philippines system of basic education. It is the chief formulator of Philippines primary and secondary school system. It has its headquarters at the DepEd Complex in Meralco Avenue, Pasig. And for the next, Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management. The current Secretary is Tina Rosemary Kanda, who served in an acting capacity following the resignation of Wendell Avisado on August 13, 2001 due to health reasons. Is the primary government agency responsible for the formulation and implementation of the national budget through the efficient and sound utilization of government funds and resources for the attainment of the country development objectives.
Hello everyone, especially to our teacher and my name is John Sigurena. I am taking on the Bachelor in Technical Vocational Teaching Education, major in Transport Technology. Today I am going to report the Section 7, Section 8, and Section 9 of the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council under the Republic Act Number 10121. Section 7. Authority of the NDRRMC or the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Chairperson. The chairperson of the NDRRMC may call upon the other instrumentalities or entities of the government and the non-government and civic organization for the assistance in terms of the use of their facilities and resources for the protection and preservation of life and properties in the whole range of disaster risk reduction and management. Ang chairperson ng NDRRMC o ang sangay ng pamahalaan ng mga leader ang nagbibigay ng mga panuntunan sa mga tao at sa mga taong gagamitin dito upang magsagawa ng mga mahalagang bagay upang gamitin ng mga tao sa oras ng kalamidad. Sila ay mga sangay ng gobyerno na kung saan nagbibigay babala, impormasyon, abiso o mga mahalagang anunsyo tuwing may sakuna o kalamidad sa Pilipinas. Responsibilidad ng mga taong ito o ang National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council ang pagsasama-sama at koordinasyon at pangangasiwa sa pagbuo at pagpapatupad ng mga ahensya at organisasyon sa mga batas, programa, plano, mga lituntunin at teknikal na pamantayan under sa Republic Act ng 10121. Section 8. The Office of Civil Defense. The Office of Civil Defense or OCD shall have the primary mission of administering a comprehensive national civil defense and disaster risk reduction and management program by providing leadership in the continuous development of a strategic and systematic approach as well as measures to reduce the vulnerabilities and risk to hazard and manage the consequence of disasters. Layunin ng civil defense ang protektahan ng ating pamayanan laban sa mga military attacks o mga sakuna na pumapasok sa ating bansa. Layunin nito na magbigay ng mga leadership sa patuloy na pag-develop ng mga estratehiya o systematic approach na maaaring gamitin ng mga organisasyon upang mas mapadali at mapagaan ang mga gawain sa pagtugon sa kanilang pangunahing pangangailangan. Dagdag pa rito, gumagamit sila ng mga emergency operation, prevention, mitigation, preparation, response or emergency evacuation and recovery sa nasabing lugar upang mas malunasan ang mga maaaring sanhi ng mga sakuna na ayon sa mga nasabing lugar upang mas maiwasan ang pagdami ng mga nasabing buhay sa ating mga mamamayan. Section 9. Powers and Function of the Office of Civil Defense. Advise the National Council on matters relating to disaster risk reduction and management consistent with the policies and scope as defined in this act. Formulate and implement the NDRRMP and ensures that the physical framework, social, economic, and environmental plans in communities, cities, municipalities, and provinces are consistent with such plan. The National Council shall approve the NDRRMP. Layunin ng National Council na ipatupad ang mga halagang payo sa lahat ng organisasyon ng bansa at sa lahat ng mga nagsasagawa ng disaster risk reduction management. At layunin nito na ipatupad sa lahat ng palisiyan ng bansa na nakabase sa Republic Act na ito. Gayunpaman, pinapayagan ng National Council ng NDRRMP na may lahat ng plano, mapa-social, economic, and environmental plans sa lahat ng komunidad, municipalities and provinces sa nasabing bansa. Review and evaluate the local disaster risk reduction and management plans. To facilitate the integration of disaster risk reduction measures into the local comprehensive development plan, CDP, and comprehensive land use plan or CLUP. Layunin ng local disaster risk reduction management plan na suriin ang lahat ng plano na kabilang sa organisasyon ng Comprehensive Development Plan at Comprehensive Land Use Plan upang mas mapadali ang paglalathala nito sa nasabing bansa o nasabing lugar. Establish Disaster Risk Reduction Management Training Institute in such suitable location as may be deemed appropriate to train public and private individuals, both local and national, in such subject as disaster risk reduction and management, among others. Ensure that all disaster risk reduction programs, projects, and activities requires regional and international support shall be in accordance with duly established national policies and aligned with international agreements.
Sa puntong ito, tungkulin din ng Office of Civil Defense na makapagpatayo ng isang angkop na lugar para isagawa ang mga training o public man o private na individual. Both local and national nakakailanganin sa pagbuo sa isang organisasyon na kabilang sa National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council. Kailangan din na ang lahat ng programa at aktibidad na ipapagawa na gagawin ay nakabase sa regional at international policies na naka-align sa international agreements ng bansa.
Ensure that government agencies and LGUs give top priority and take adequate and appropriate measures in disaster risk reduction and management.
Tungkulin din ng Office of Civil Defense na tugunan ng iba pang ahensya ng pamahalaan upang masiguro nasa pangunahing prioridad ang pagsasagawa ng disaster risk reduction and management at iba pang gawain nito. LGU at iba pang programa ng pamahalaan na nagsasagawa ng pangunahing lunas ay dapat masigurong ito ay nasa ilalim ng kanilang pangasiwa at kailangan ni priority upang ito ay masigurong handa sa oras ng sakuna at sa iba pang serbisyo na kakailanganan ng mga mamamayan.
requirements in the delivery of disaster risk reduction programs and activities of the CSOs, the private sector, and also the NGOs. So what is CSO organization? The government organization, or the NGO, is any non-profit voluntary citizens group which is organized on a local, national, and international level. So typically, they are organized around specific issues such as UN pillars of peace and security of human rights and development. So what is the role of the CSOs? So the civil society organizations they play an important role in enhancing transparency and good governance in developing countries by contributing to this very public on issues surrounding determination of government budgets, as well as supporting greater transparency of public revenues. What is the role of the private sector? The Philippines government acknowledged the role of the private sector as an important partner in the attaining countries the development of goods and inclusive growth. So the government ensures that the interests of both the private sector and its citizens are balanced. So the policies and the procedures are continually enhanced. The main role of the private sector. The private sector provides around 90% of the employment in the developing world, including formal and informal jobs, delivers critical goods and services, and contributes to tax revenues and the efficient flow of the capital. So further, we will undertake the majority of the future development in the urban areas. So formal jobs, corporations, and the partnership. The informal jobs street vendors, market, etc. So mostly in rural or informal areas, we consider a formal since these business are rarely registered at the national or the regional levels. So usually we not have a formal arrangement with these micro-employees. What is the role of the government units or the LGUs. In the Philippines, it is divided into three levels: provinces and independent cities, and municipalities, and also barangays, all of which are the collective units of local government units. What are the power of LGUs? The local government units shall have the power to establish an organization that shall be responsible for the efficient and effective priorities to create their own sources of revenues, including taxes, fees, and the charter barangay is affected. Hindi naman is city, municipal, DRRMCs if two or more barangay are affected. Letter C, the provincial DRRMC if the two or more cities or municipalities are affected. So, hindi naman is the regional DRRMC or more provinces are affected. And also at the DRMC or more regions are
Section 23, founding of the OCD as a lead agency to carry out the provisions of this act. The OCD shall be located a budget of 1 billion peso, revolving funds starting from the effectivity of this act.
Nagbibigay ito ng proteksyon at inaalagaan ang kapakanan ng mga tao sa digmaan man o sa tuna. So, ang OCD ay dapat na 1 bilyong pisong revolving fund simula sa abiso ng batas na ito.
Section 24 Annual Report. The National Council to the OCD shall submit to the Office of the President, the Senate, and the House of Representatives within the first quarter of the succeeding year an annual report relating to the progress of the implementations of the NDRRMP.
For this section, ang National Council of OCD ay nagsasubmit sa Office of the President, Senate, at House of Representatives within the first quarter for the succeeding year ng mga reports relating sa progress sa mga implementation ng NDRRMP. In the other words, or organization documenting its activities and financial in the provision financial year of every succeeding year. Section 25 Implementing Rules and Regulation. The NDRRMC that its chairperson shall issue the necessary rules and regulation for the effective implementation of this act within 90 days. After approval of this act in the OCD, in the consultation within the key stakeholders shall take the lead in preparation of these implementing rules and
regulations within the active involvement of Technical Management Group of the NDRMNC. How are laws implemented in the Philippines? Bills are laws in the making. They pass into the laws when they are approved by both House of the President in the Philippines. If the President does not act on the proposed law submitted by Congress, it will lapse into laws after 30 days of receipt.
Section 29 under Republic Act number 10121. Separability clause. This clause states that if a proportion of the agreement is void, only same portion is invalid and not the entire contract. Section 30 under Republic Act 10121. This agreement shall take effect upon the date of signing. As indicated below, this agreement shall inure in favor of your successors and assigns and shall continue until a signed notice of revocation is received.